Yeah, I just bought like a job lot of Kerrang magazines from the like 80s and early 90s
Uh-huh.
back in the day. Um and it was God, it probably came to an obscene amount of money. It was like £100 for like all like a massive stack of these. And I just
Yeah.
thought I saw it on eBay and I thought I have to have them. They have the posters in them and everything. So I had a very cool decorated room at the time. I've still got all of them. They're in a box somewhere. But Dan Reed Network was one of the bands that, was talked about in this, in these Kerrang magazines. And I was like, Dan Reed Network, why have I never heard of this? And I looked up Ritual and
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, this is badass. Love it.
It it's just so funny to me that I had never heard of them either before. And clearly they had some sort of deal with the Rock Cards company because everything else was like million selling artists. And then
Yeah.
sprinkled in was the Dan Reed Network. And so the company, whoever it was clearly pushing them. But it's so interesting just because it's I mean, to be fair, it's very cheesy stuff.
Yeah.
But in that very fun kind of way. But hey, it's like that's one of those adventures of doing this shit is that I occasionally wind up stumbling upon stuff that I otherwise never would have heard. And then luckily I have awesome the shitheads. A lot of them are referring to themselves as shitheads now, which I love.
Yeah.
That will, one of them finally, stepped up and sent me a bunch of shit. So I ended up, that was just amazing. I didn't know it was a whole box full of stuff. I thought,
Yeah.
oh, he found a record for me and he's sending it to me. I'm like, that's already awesome. Anyway, hello everybody. This is our intro conversation about the Dan Reed Network, who won't be, I'm willing to bet, won't be in our list today of songs that we're talking about. Cranked and Ranked is the name of the show, but today is a CNR sidebar.
It is.
Which is when to be honest, we're still ranking. So it's kind of still cranked and ranked, but it's a
CNR rank bar.
Yeah, whatever. We do our regular artist rankings, band rankings and whatnot. And then the CNR sidebar is kind of for episodes that don't really kind of fit in any of our sort of pre-named formats. And we can kind of just do whatever we want. And I almost think, I don't even know if you discussed this with me. I think that you sent me the link where you had the list of all of the shows and you had just written in there the top 10 songs of our lives. And I immediately went, what the fuck? What the fuck does that mean? But then also I went, that's going to be a great discussion. And so that's really basically all the discussion we had is we had a title, which is the top 10 songs of our lives, which I took on board as important in my life in some way, form, or fashion.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing today. The top 10 songs of our lives, meaning old head, me, with me as always, Eddie Sparxx.
That is me.
Already sporting the Christmas gear.
It's December. It's Advent. Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
Do you know what that made me decide I want? And I know it's probably out there. Somebody's probably made it. But I want a Christmas sweater that says, now I have a machine gun.
Yeah, my cousin has one. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to have to find that.
It's badass.
But this isn't the Christmas episode. There will be, or a holiday episode. I say Christmas. It's so weird when I say Christmas out loud because when I say it, it has nothing to do with Christ. And so I immediately go, well, I should say holidays because it's like, I'm not religious. So and so it has nothing to do with that. So it's just a mass.
Yeah.
It's a present mass. Holiday
But
mass.
even mass could be interpreted as Christian. Like,
I guess that's true. I'm having some orange soda today.
very nice. You've been on the sodies lately. You've been doing some sody pops.
Yeah, they're good to give me a little bit of energy. Unfortunately, this has no caffeine in it. It's
Yeah.
just sugar and nice flavor. But
Got that nice crunchy ice ASMR going on too.
oh shit, we bought we love a particular kind of ice so much we bought an ice maker that makes these
Wow.
little crunchy cube ice things. And I'm never going back. I'm never going back to just regular ass fridge ice or whatever, or ice in
Really?
a cube thingy. No, fuck that. This is
There's something to be said for how ice is delivered, like what shape it takes.
yeah.
You know, we've, my girlfriend and I, we've recently invested in a spherical ice sphere thingy maker that makes balls of ice, and it was kind of
Oh.
surreal. You know,
And then
having
you just scoop it out of the bowl or whatever.
yeah. You know, it was kind of surreal having some balls in my mouth. So,
um all right, we're already there. We're already at
I'm on it with the zingers today. Oh yeah.
So I'm sure we'll go off on plenty of tangents, but the top 10 songs of our lives, this is one of those things that I had to just walk away from at some point, because I started off with a list of about 30 songs, I think, and that's me even leaving out songs. I just was like,
Yeah.
all right, these 30 definitely have to be in the top 10. And so little by
Which
little,
is why my 10.3 is
no, so I did whittle it down to 10. And so I had to really start thinking about, okay, I've been on this earth for, a little over 45 years. And the majority of my life has revolved around music, more so than anything else. Like, aside from music, the only thing that I think I've done more is eating and drinking and pooping.
Yeah.
That's all I've done more than music. But
All of the unavoidable shit.
yeah, you have to do it. But so I started to think about my journey not only as a music fan, which is a huge portion of my life, but then as a music creator, which is another large portion of my life. And so I tried to represent those two things in the best way possible, covering music that it was important and still is important. So it can't be like, I couldn't put Thriller by Michael Jackson, whereas when I was a little kid, that song was so important to me and really became like me being a fan of an artist for the very first time. But that song does not hold the same meaning to me today as it did when I was 7 years old or whatever. So that's kind of where I came at it from. And did you do kind of the same thing?
I've kind of gone down a chronological route with my top 10. My 10 through 1 isn't necessarily a case of quality or importance,
Yeah.
apart from maybe the top number 1 spot. But for me, these songs represent moments in my life where I heard this sound and I wanted more, and I ended up going down a rabbit hole. So
Yeah.
there were certain, for example, I didn't end up with any Dream Theater in my list because I have yet to do a prog deep dive beyond, kind of Dream Theater. You could argue Tool and Queensryche, but they're not nearly in that progressive world as something like Dream Theater, for example, even though I could totally see them on this list. But I took it as a 10 songs that made me who I am today sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah, so in that respect, there's really only one song in my list that came out when I was an adult.
Really?
Like, yeah. There's a lot of like teenage stuff in there, but like that's kind of what those are the formative years. That's especially for
Yeah.
people like us. That's a really big chunk of who we are, and like we expand in different ways. Hopefully, but yeah. So, but mine, I actually worked out an order of importance in my life. So, it's not chronological, but it is. I'm 75% happy with this order. So, but yeah, so this is such an interesting thing because I constantly have ideas for videos on my channel that are kind of like this, and it gets so difficult for me to do it that I just completely give up on it altogether. So you presenting this as an episode for us, it gave me a deadline, and I went, okay, I can't fucking back out of this because I agreed to it. Because I have
Sometimes
two.
you need someone else to commit to in order to get this shit done, man. Like,
Yeah, because I have a couple things. Like there's a video I want to eventually do. Maybe I'll do it in the beginning of the new year, but it's called the House Fire 25, and it's essentially like the 25 records from my collection that if there was a fire and I could only grab 25 records, what would they be? And I'm not talking about albums or musically speaking. It has to be actual pieces of vinyl that are important for whatever reason. And
yeah.
then on top of that, I've always wanted to do like a Desert Island 25 albums.
Yeah.
And that's another one that I keep working on the list, and then I go, fuck it, I'll do that later.
I tell you, it's ironic that you bring up a house fire situation today because the fire brigade came to my flat today.
For what?
Because the alarm went off, like not just a smoke alarm in a room, the whole building got evacuated. Like the master alarm across the whole building just like starts going off.
Was there actually a fire, or was it some hooligans?
Nah. I think it was I think it was a faulty alarm. The alarm. It's done this last month as well, where it was like clearly some dust or something has built up around like the sensors and that, and it's so annoying because it always happens at the worst time, like before coitus or about to take a shit. And you're just like
before coitus.
Yeah, it's like it's always at the worst time. It can never be while I'm at work. It's always like partner gives me the eyes.
I don't know.
Move over slightly and then fucking hell, god damn it.
I'm still baffled that you used the word coitus. Like
I've never used that before. It just came to me in a
It's so funny the dirty shit that we talk about on this show, and then just in the aspect of you talking about you with your lady, it becomes coitus.
Oh, well, you got to be classy, when. So anyway, I was fucking this bitch, right?
I guess we don't really talk like that.
Yeah. We're not one of the alpha bro podcasts that's like,
We're not a sketch on a Dr. Dre album.
Nah. No. We're not gonna hit you with Andrew Tate levels of masculinity. Yeah. Women are my property, and I am going to jail. Or did he get out? Did he get out?
I have no idea.
I don't know. I've stopped paying attention to shit like that now.
I'm just really
like, what? Why do I need all these added stresses in my life? I don't give a fuck what he's up to.
Yeah. I have trouble keeping up with any, like, I guess once again, like I'm so filled with like music in my life, and that's what I'm constantly trying to be on top of.
Yeah.
Not only the music that I love, but new music and discovering stuff. So news stories that are unrelated to music, I might see it and go, I wonder what happened to that. And then everyone's just like, oh, you didn't know? I'm like, well, no, I didn't. I wasn't paying attention to that. Sorry.
I'm beginning to realize that, there is a cutoff point of me before social media and after social media. And there is a definite heightened anxiety along with that. I so relate to people who are like, granted, as a very nature of what I want to do, I have to be online.
Yeah.
But I try my best not to look at the news, because now I'm like, fucking
Yep.
season 4 of the 2020s is coming, and I wonder which two nations are going to start bombing each other next. It's
Yeah.
just it.
Yeah. I think I do
If
my
I want to
best.
if I want to hear about that stuff, I'm going to put an album on with some, socially conscious lyrics and some fucking riffs. Not
Yeah.
tune into what depressing shit Sky News has to say anymore, because it's all fucking sad. It's all
Yeah.
sad.
A lot
Listen
of
to
it.
music instead.
I think that I've pretty much carved out my little area of the internet because I'm on there a lot for everything that I do, but I've created this world where like I don't get fed very much non-music content most of the time. So much
Yeah.
so that if I happen to be following somebody who's really into sports and they do like a sports post, my brain immediately goes, "Oh, people are still watching sports?" I'm like, who the fuck's watching sports? And because that's just my life. All that stuff has been shoved out. But anyway, back to music. Okay, we might as well just do it. There's our top 10 songs of our lives, which we might as well just do it. So you said yours are chronological, 10 to 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And it I approached it from, what are the 10 most pivotal songs in my life, that have led to where I am now. Because
Okay.
I've long said on this podcast that Du Hast by Rammstein was my introduction to what I liked about, metal.
Yeah.
But I was thinking to myself, Rammstein haven't really stayed with me as much as another band on the Guitar Hero 5 soundtrack.
Okay.
So I'm kicking off this list with my number 10, Sweating Bullets by Megadeth.
Wow. Nice.
This was my first Megadeth song, and I must have played that song twice every day. I loaded up that game for like a whole year, until the next Guitar Hero came out, because
Yeah.
I just absolutely fucking loved every second of that song. You got that intro with like the long sustained guitar leads, and then this like weirdly bluesy ranty Dave Mustaine. Oh,
Yeah.
it's nice talking to myself. There's like a sass to it
Yeah.
that only Dave can pull off. Not to mention the solo, the breakdown, just
Yep.
a weird but masterfully created song that just really opened my eyes to what metal could be, where I was like, wow, this doesn't sound like Black Sabbath or Iron Maiden. It's like heavier, but it's also, I don't want to say like, it's fun, it was like, it can be as heavy as it is fun. And that's why this ended up being my favorite song on that game, next to 2 Minutes to Midnight and Looks That Kill, because I just found myself drawn to that era,
Yeah.
because there were a couple modern metal songs on there. I think there was a Children of Bodom song, which was really fucking hard on the expert difficulty, so I always failed at that. But Sweating Bullets, man, that was, I actually heard Megadeth before I knowingly heard Metallica. I'd heard Nothing Else Matters, but
Yeah.
Megadeth actually came along in my life before Metallica. But I'll get to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sweating Bullets is my number 10.
I love that song, but also like it's a big reason why I get so kind of bored with modern, not just Megadeth, but a lot of those thrash bands, is because they don't take those kind of chances anymore. Nobody would do a song like that. I mean, some would, but your Megadeths and your Megadeths and Overkills and Exoduses, they're not gonna be doing a song like that. But
We
unfortunately,
all know what works now.
that's what, yeah, but that is what made those bands so special to me back in the day, because of, you would buy a new album from them and you were like, oh, you kind of felt like you were going to get something different.
It's the adventurousness of it.
And I loved that. And it's just like so much of the adventurousness in music. And I get it. You get older and it's a job now.
Yeah.
And there's probably there's probably still passion in there. I'm not going to, say that there's not, but at a certain point,
John, I need these riffs for the third quarter of the financial year.
I mean, yeah. But so I totally understand that. But there are some bands that are huge, and for goddamn sure they're a business. But you hear the music they put out, and it seems like they're having a good time making music. And so whether or not there's a deadline and a quota or whatever the fuck it is, but I just, but back then I just feel like the world of music was so much more open, because nobody was saying that there were rules, especially in the early 90s. It was like anything goes, because there are certain things that you kind of know is going to be a hit, but a year later, are those same things going to be a hit? Because it's constantly shifting and mutating, and everybody, not everybody, but everybody I knew, we were all very open to that. We loved it. So I love that song. That's I didn't get to include a Megadeth on here.
Wow.
But that, I mean, that there was a Megadeth in my long list, but it got whittled down. So when you say chronological, you're talking about chronological in your life, correct?
In my life, yeah. So this song would have entered my life early 2010. So
got it.
Yeah.
So not too long before that, 2003, I think, something like that.
Mm-hmm. I
was in a period of my life I was kind of referred to as the lost years, and not that I don't remember them, but starting around somewhere in the late 90s, everything around me started moving in a way that didn't feel natural or fun to me. So like the music that was coming out was shifting in a way where I went, this just doesn't seem interesting or that fun anymore in the world of like metal and heavy rock music. And then all of the people around me, my friends, had very quickly jumped ship. Like it was to my teenage brain, it really felt like I went to bed going like metal, and then I woke up the next day and my friends were all like, we're listening to punk and emo now, and I'm just like, what?
I didn't get that memo.
So so I, because they were my friends and I was young, I didn't really know how to process this kind of shit. And so I ended up finding things that I loved in the world of punk and somewhat in emo as well. But then eventually, my friendships with a lot of people started to kind of like, fade away. And I started to really realize that I am a very antisocial person, and I have severe anxiety, and so I would withdraw from things a lot. And so once that all kind of started to happen, and I was left to my own devices, and I was like trying to find the music that would make me feel as good as all of that shit I loved from young years up until mid high school or whatever. And I went everywhere, like listening to all kinds of different stuff, I even went through a period where I went back and I was like, what does Rolling Stone consider the best albums of all time? I'm going to go get to know those artists and those albums. I did all this shit exploring, and very few times did I find something where I went, oh, this is so good and this is giving me this feeling. It wasn't doing it for me. And so I was constantly, but I still had my go-tos because, I still listened. I would still throw on like Injustice for All and be on like, oh, it's so fucking good. But like I would hear newer metal and I would be like, this seems too simplistic and kind of lame and a lot of dude bro action going on. Like it's like the football players that used to want to beat me up for being into metal. Now they all started bands. And I was just like, ugh, fuck this. But then the long story longer, in I think it was 2003, I heard the album Leviathan by Mastodon. And I knew of the band because they were starting to get, some real traction and stuff in like the music news world. And I just remember one day I went, I'm going to go check them out. And I literally just put on song number 1 on Leviathan, which is called Blood and Thunder.
Yeah.
And that was the moment that it almost kind of clicked like, oh shit.
Thank God.
Oh shit. There's like people doing great metal, and I just have to like dig a little deeper and find it. But so Blood and Thunder is a fucking fantastic song. Gives me goosebumps listening to it every time. I love it. But it's even more important because something happened around that time too, and where I started to get reintroduced to the music that I had kind of left behind when I was younger. And just going back to that, and I was like, wait. The music that used to make me feel something great still makes me feel that. So why do I feel like I'm supposed to discard the old stuff? Because that's what my friends did. But my friends were so just like, oh no, we're not listening to that anymore. Yeah. And that's what I thought, oh, that's what you're supposed to do if you're going to be taken seriously as a music listener and performer or whatever. But very quickly I was like, no, this is bullshit. Yeah. All that stuff is amazing. And so I started to, that all came back to me. And then at the same time, there's all this other music from that same period of time that I didn't give the proper respect to. So I dove. So this modern song really kind of just drove me to get back into a whole bunch of older stuff. But at the same time, it got me into Mastodon. And I remember like soon after that, like it was almost like a weird series of events where I heard the album and I was like, this is so good. And I was like, oh, they're coming to Austin on this tour. And I went to go see them. And it just felt so good to be at a metal show. I was just like, it's like, this is awesome. So that's kind of like, it kind of threw me back on track of being into heavy music and into metal. And, it was still hard for me to find modern bands that I love. It's gotten a little easier in the past handful of years, but the beginning of all that is hearing Blood and Thunder. And that song, it never gets old to me. It's always one of the biggest bangers in the history of music for me. So that's my number 10.
Well, I've got one hell of a segue here because Blood and Thunder was one of the guest songs on Guitar Hero Metallica.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep. And you know what song was also on Guitar Hero Metallica?
There was a lot. There was other ones. There was like Suicidal and all sorts of other stuff too, right?
No. Which Metallica song?
Which Metallica song?
See if you can guess which one. Blew my fucking mind.
One?
I'd already heard one by this point.
Whiplash.
Think faster.
Faster than Dyer's Eve. Or Blackened.
A little slower.
Battery?
No. It's on Ride. It's on Ride the Lightning.
Creeping Death.
Nope. Fight Fire with Fire.
Fight Fire with Fire. We're going to be here all day. I'm going to be like Saint Anger.
So, yeah, my thing with Fight Fire with Fire, like, Creeping Death nowadays is my favorite Metallica song. Like,
love it.
Like, that is a number one. I think that one and Blackened are always fighting it out for the top spot for me. But I mean, when I first heard Fight Fire with Fire, I'd already heard Whiplash, and I thought, that's amazing. How are they playing that fast? And then I heard Fight Fire with Fire, and I was
Yeah,
like, you
yeah,
know, you ever have, I mean, of course you did, but everyone who gets into thrash metal has that first moment where you hear something crazy fast,
yeah,
and your mind, you find yourself doing like the YouTuber thumbnail face in real life.
yeah. That
Uh,
but mine is on my list. That when I
yeah.
first heard something that was fast like that. Yeah, yeah,
Like, oh man, like I'm getting chills just thinking about it. But like the first
yeah,
time I heard Fight Fire with Fire, it was to that point, it was the heaviest, most furious, angry, heavy thing I'd ever heard.
yeah,
Like I couldn't believe it existed. It was that much of a game changing moment for me because like I'd heard Sweating Bullets, but that's not a fast song.
no,
Um, like I think maybe yeah, the fastest thing I'd heard at that point was Whiplash, and I thought that was fast, which
yeah,
it is,
yeah,
but it's on the slower end of the fast spectrum when it comes to thrash metal. Um, but when you enter the realms of Fight Fire with Fire, I mean, Jesus Christ,
yeah,
like, and not just with how fast it is, it's an incredibly composed song. Like the harmony solo,
yeah,
like, oh
yeah.
man,
And
just
and,
takes me
and I
back.
and I've always loved how that it starts off the album with that sort of bait and switch where you've had the nice
Hmm.
little acoustic intro, and then it goes into like the fastest song they had done at the time, you know.
Yeah,
So I'm like, that's yeah, that's fucking great. Plus, the first time I heard that song and that album, the it was the overall the reason why that it's there's many reasons why that's my favorite album of all time, but I've
yeah.
always just thought the guitar tone on that fucking album is so cool.
It's so
It's
mean sounding.
like I know that it
Yeah.
sounds really good on Puppets as well, but for something about how it sounds with the production style on Lightning, I'm just like, it's so great. It's just
Yeah.
like that's metal guitar to me. It's how it should sound.
It's raw but weighty.
Yeah,
I think the thing with Puppets is it's a very polished album by comparison in terms of production. It's a lot cleaner. Whereas like Ride the Lightning took what Kill 'Em All was doing but added the weight that Kill 'Em All lacked, you
yeah,
know? Because Kill 'Em All's great, but it's very raw and quite trebly
yeah,
and mid-range. This is just a fucking gut punch at 300 miles an hour, you know? And
yeah,
I mean, hearing it like that was what sold me on thrash. I was like, I love this
yeah,
shit right here, you know?
yeah.
Yeah. Like that's a there's before Fight Fire with Fire and there's after Fight Fire with Fire for me.
You could
That
say you discovered fire. There you go.
Hey, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, so that's my
In many
number nine.
ways, awesome. My number nine's quite different.
Okay.
I first heard this song when I was in high school, and it's an interesting one because it's a song that I loved from the first time I heard it, but I didn't quite understand the impact it had on me for several years. And it's weird how one, two, three, four, five, six of these tracks are first tracks on albums, which makes sense because that's your intro, you know, to a lot of things. But my number nine is the song "Facet Squared" by Fugazi, which is the first song on "In on the Kill Taker." And I it I got into Fugazi in high school, and this particular song, there was something about it. I mean, the main riff that you hear, everything cuts out except for the guitar, and that's like it's so fucking amazing. But the song itself has this urgency to it, and it's to me it's very heavy,
Hmm.
but also not really. It's like you hear it, and I remember clearly thinking, well, clearly this is like, more on the alternative side of things for, like, the terms that were being thrown around back then. But I was there's a couple of songs like this on here along with this one, where I it kind of infected me. And I realized later, once I really started to get comfortable with songwriting, and not just like songwriting as in I sit at home and I write a song, songwriting where I was thinking about being on stage playing the song and how everything would go together and possibly what other instruments would be doing. I started to realize that I was always kind of going for that kind of vibe where it's heavy, but you couldn't really attach it to anything. Are there
Hmm.
metallic elements? Yes. Are there punk elements? Yes. It's like, it's so for some reason, and as much as I love metal, and metal has been a big part of my life, I don't know why the music I make always comes out very not metal. Well, I mean, it's partially metal, but and I think a lot of that has to do with, a few of these songs on here, but Facet Squared by Fugazi is a really big one because it kind of pushed me in that direction and was almost like planting seeds in my brain. So I would always pick up a guitar, and it got to the point in the early 2000s when I was in bands, I would be writing stuff and I'd just be like, this just fucking sounds like Fugazi. And so I just had to, like, like throw up my hands and be like, all right, I guess I'm trying to write Fugazi songs. But, in the end of the day, nobody can really do that. Like, there's a thing that they did that's just so unique. And so I guess that's also part of it, is that, Fugazi as a band, after seeing them live as well, I was just like, that became the bar for, like, I'm never going to feel satisfied being in a band until I look around me and I'm all like, yep, we could open for Fugazi.
Yeah.
And I never felt that way. Never once. But it sort of set the standard for me. And so that song's super important to me. And it, just like with Blood and Thunder, it gives me chills every time it starts, because it's so ingrained in who I am as a musician.
Hmm.
And so that ends up at number 9, only number 9.
Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to move along a couple years in my musical development where, I'd kind of done the thrash thing, gotten into the big four, and I'd
Mm-hmm.
kind of been there, done that at this point, dabbled in various other genres, but not really dove deep into any particular one of them.
Yeah.
And then a little thing comes along, starts with a G and an R, and and proceeds with another U, N, G, and an E, spelling the word grunge.
Oh, you got
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
That was like decoding some sort of secret message. I was just like, wait, what? What is this? What is he
yeah,
saying?
yeah. That's could be my most cryptic segue yet. But my kind of turning point for realizing I like something that isn't just
Yeah,
but I need to find out what that is.
yeah.
And so that big moment for me was, a culmination of factors, namely a little, uh, only the best selling game of the PS2 era, GTA San Andreas,
Yeah.
introduced me to this number, the Grunge Station, Radio X. My number 8 is Plush by Stone Temple Pilots.
That's a damn good one. It's not on my list, but that's one of my I think one of the best songs of the 90s right there.
Yeah, yeah, and like I think it was like early in the morning, one spring morning in 2012. It was a weekend. uh, I turned on the PS2, and all of a sudden, this song that I'd heard several times just hit me at the right moment. And I
Yeah.
just loved how kind of weird and wet, but still distorted the guitar sound, how spacious the song is. Scott Weiland's wailing, way and the dog defender
Yeah.
vocals going on. But the thing that really hooked me on this song was that really psychedelic pre-chorus in that song, where
Yeah.
like everything opens up and it's like you've been thrown into the swimming pool on the front cover of Nevermind, and you're just like, oh, this is grunge, dude. Like, I just remember sitting with my amp that I still have right next to me. It's a Line 6 Spider. And it had like all the built-in amp settings. And I just remember this was the song that made me put chorus on every tone I came up with, because I was like,
Yeah.
right, well, it needs to sound like a cross between Plush and Come As You Are, and also um the Black Album. So I'd just like have these really distorted tones, but I would always put chorus on them.
Yeah.
And then I found out about Zach Wilde era Ozzy, and then that was just like a whole other thing. But anyway, yeah, Plush is just an incredibly well written song.
Mhm.
It's rocking, but it's real laid back, and it's what I'd refer to as one of my bath jams. It's like, it's a song where you listen to it in the bathtub and it hits different, dude. Like, and which makes me sad that I no longer have a bathtub, just a shower. I've considered buying a cauldron and sitting in it.
Just go pick. Well, I guess no. You're not. You don't have a yard. But I was like, if you did, you just go buy one of those. They now sell inflatable jacuzzis.
Oh yeah. I've got a balcony. I could do that.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't know if it would fit on there, but it's worth a
Probably
try.
not. But
Yeah. That being said, though, I mean, Plush even took on a new meaning when I already started to like this thing called grunge.
Yeah.
I already started to like it, but then around, you're talking like May 2012, I was involved in an incident with another student that led to the breaking of my kneecap, and I was on my ass for a few months before I recovered and had surgery on it. But
just in case, and some of you didn't hear the story before when we told it on this show, we just got to clarify that he wasn't in a fight. It was it was a dumbass kid. I guess he thought it was a prank by kicking you or whatever.
It was like, I was kind of running past. And we were kind of friends on and off, but like, I kind of tapped him on the shoulders before a PE lesson, and it startled him. And I think it startled him to the point where it really angered him, and he flipped me over his shoulder, kung fu style, karate style, or whatever. And I landed on my already dislocated kneecap at this point in the melee, landed with my full weight on it, and it had gone 90 degrees to the right and snapped in half, which is not a pleasant sensation.
But skipping forward to the recovery.
Yeah. So at the time, my uncle, who at various times in my life has shown me music that I've inevitably ended up loving, and is a musician and has been in bands himself. Basically, when I was incapacitated, whenever they had a rehearsal, they were like, "Hey, do you want to come to the rehearsal space and we'll like kind of show you the set list so you can like see the inner workings of a band before you get out there and make your own?" I was like, hell yeah, dude. So I basically sat in a deck chair with my leg propped up on a drum stool, and basically had these like grunge gigs all to myself.
Nice.
And it was really cool because Plush was one of the songs they covered, and I was like, okay, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Uncle's band, both have the same song. Things are falling into place.
Yeah.
I need to get into grunge. And I did. and you'll see with a few other. 2012 was a very pivotal year for me because that's the year I
Yeah,
discovered that the 90s and especially the early 90s were just fucking goated.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
So yeah, that's my number 8.
speaking of that, my number 8 came out in the early '90s, and it's far from grunge. But this was at the time I heard this song, so that I was, I was a sponge at that point with
Mm,
rock and metal, and I was always looking for the next thing, no matter what that was. It was, whether it was something that was a little bit weirder, something that was more mainstream, something that was heavier. I was always just like, I'm kind of still the same way now, only with not as much good music out there. But I just always was looking for other things. And then my friends and I all started, getting into like heavier and heavier music. And then one day I heard the song Hammer Smashed Face by
nice.
Cannibal Corpse. I don't remember when I heard this song. And I don't remember if I heard an Obituary song first or this one, but this one, I got into death metal, but this one had the most impact because it was the most brutal.
Yeah.
I had never the blast beat thing was pretty new to me, but the guttural vocal thing, especially the way it's done on that album on Tomb of the
Yeah.
Mutilated, was the creepiest, weirdest thing I'd ever heard, and I was just like, why does this work for me? And it
Yeah.
really did. And it's at that point, it was the heaviest thing I had ever heard, and it really like drove me to, it started my love of death metal, but also just the idea that I really enjoyed this really beautiful. So I already listened to rock music, and my dad was already just like, that's just a bunch of noise. But now I was getting into music that legitimately he would say that, and I'd be like, you got a point.
Yeah.
But I realized that like I loved it so much so that I started to realize it started to become a ritual where, at the end of the night, my I'd have to go to bed before I had to get up for school in the morning. And I just remember that we had like a rocker recliner in the living room, and I would get my Walkman, and the last thing that I would listen to every night would be a death metal album, because for some reason it would really like shut everything off in my brain, and I would start to
Mm,
get really sleepy. And I would just be like, once the Deicide album ends or whatever, I would just be like, all right, time for bed. And I don't know
yeah.
what it was about that. I mean, it still kind of does it for me now. We're just really aggressive music sometimes just really like, and I don't think it's necessarily relaxing me. I think it has to do with my overactive brain and my anxiety. I think it just
Mm.
does something to shut that off.
Yeah,
And
because it's
so it,
so extreme and
yeah,
full of
and
information, basically. It's
yeah,
like,
and so so I feel it in my body where I'm just like, all of a sudden I'm able to disconnect from the nonsense in my head and just go, oh, okay, cool.
mm,
And then so, and Hammer Smash Face was the beginning of that, and it's an absolute fucking classic. So yeah, number 8, Hammer Smashed Face.
very nice. Well, I'm gonna stay in the same kind of zone as I was before, but kind of on the other end of the same kind of area. So
Okay.
grunge era, but not necessarily grunge band. My next pivotal song in my life from this same time period, so still 2012. We're going to
Yeah.
be here for a while. Midlife Crisis by Faith No More.
Oh shit. Yeah.
Yep. So this song, alongside Epic, Falling to Pieces, basically any of them that had a video I just started. I saw the video for Epic, and I was like, I need more of this. And then I realized Midlife Crisis was also on the same radio station as Plush,
Yeah.
but it didn't sound like Plush. But I still found myself drawn to it, which further told me, shit, dude, maybe there's just something different about this era that you're just drawn to.
Hmm.
And so everything about Midlife Crisis is just it's an expertly written song.
Yeah.
B, it's a strange song.
Yeah.
And C, it's got that massive chorus. And like, talk about a song having everything going for it, man, because I had never heard anything like this. And I
Yeah.
still haven't heard anything like this before or since.
No.
Like,
No.
nobody in any meaningful capacity has replicated Faith No More in a way that wasn't completely just flat out derivative.
Yeah.
Because the beauty of Faith No More was you had like five completely different guys who had no business being in the same band,
Yeah.
somehow being one of the best bands. And it's like, I just remember being so drawn to this band when I discovered them because, I came in thinking Jim is the coolest. And then I still think Jim is really cool, but I came away from it thinking, wow, all five of these guys have something really cool about them, even though they're all completely different.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just this gateway into this world of not only alternative metal but alternative music in general, where I thought to myself, wow, this is an area where there is no rule book, you know?
Yep. Yep.
And that was the first time I started thinking to myself that I'm not your average metalhead,
Yep.
like,
Exactly.
I'll wear a battle vest, but you know what you're gonna find next to, fucking Priest. Soundgarden is also going to be right there too.
Yeah.
But man, like Midlife Crisis is one of those songs that to this day, with the hundreds of thousands of times I've heard it, still hasn't lost any of the punch that it had with me on the first time I heard it. And it's one of the tracks on my favorite album of all time, which is Angel Dust by
Yeah.
obviously Faith No More.
Hmm.
And that's my desert island disc right there, because there's so much variety, but it's also so cohesive.
Yeah.
I mean, Midlife Crisis, dude.
Yeah.
What else is there to say, man?
It
What a
was.
monster of a song.
That's one of mine that got cut from my top 10.
Wow.
Just because the big thing, it was really a battle between two songs from a particular era that above any other tracks, I put them on and they transport me. I physically feel the early 90s. And it's so odd that a song can conjure up like a time period in your brain. And
Yeah.
so Midlife Crisis was one of them, but the other one that I chose that's later on actually took precedence over that or whatever. So yeah, so I had to leave Midlife Crisis out, but that's easily one of the most important Faith No More songs for me. I mean, Epic was a big deal for me, but yeah, when I think it's also because like Angel Dust was one of those albums that it was the first, one of the earliest ones I can remember where I didn't know anybody else that listened to it.
Yeah.
I felt like I was the weirdo because I was really into this album and other people didn't like it. And so
Because they're stupid.
yeah. But it's like that. I've kind of carried that with me for my entire life. Where whenever there's that album that comes out and I go, oh, I really like this, and I kind of check everybody's pulse, and I go, oh, this isn't a thing that like tons of people are jumping on. It's even more important to me now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, but I had to leave it out. But for my number 7, we're sticking. You're right. Yeah. So we're sticking in 1992, which 1992 was Angel Dust, but also this album. So we're kind of getting back on musically influential to me as a songwriter and a musician and a guitar player. All of these things. Um, but if you anybody out there just listening to the track that I just dropped like a week ago under my alias supporting actor, the one band name that everybody kept throwing out there, I'm like, I hear a lot of this in there. I'd be like, yep. My number 7 is Unsung by Helmet.
Oh, nice.
This was pretty much my introduction to Helmet in 92. And their music from that time period has so much informed my guitar playing, my songwriting, everything. Once again, it's another band that could easily they could open for a metal band, but they could also open for some sort of indie rock band, and they would kind of work in both ways. But Unsung was just one of those things where I first heard the song, and it was the, what do you call it, staccato, the stop and start of the riff, where the drum, everything would drop out but the drums. And I just remember, and it was so just like rhythmically on point with it. And I was just like, this feels so good to me. Kind of the same way with hip hop, which I actually didn't get to include a hip hop song, which would have probably been Peter Piper by Run DMC, because that was the first one I heard. But I really think that part of my brain, the part that got really into hip hop when I was a kid, heard a song like Unsung and soon after Rage Against the Machine and stuff like that. That's why I gravitated towards that music, because I just I love the idea of every part of the band is important to the rhythm of the song. And I'm just like, how fucking cool is that? Where the whole fucking band has to be fucking locked in, because it's that important. It's because before that, it's like you had your rhythm section and the guitars would be on top playing open chords or going, it didn't fucking matter. But all of a sudden you have bands where everything is part of the rhythm.
You need to be right on it.
Yeah. And I love it. And so it's highly influential to me. I wouldn't call it even my favorite Helmet song, but it's definitely the most important Helmet song to me. And it really nudged me in that direction of at that point really connecting with the music, which is why I ended up getting a little bit into some of what would end up being like rap metal and stuff. But even that, I kind of lost me at some point too. But it all started with Unsung, because just hearing that rhythm. It was almost like, you could say that about like when I first heard Epic by Faith No More. That's got hip hop quality to it. But at the end of the day, the guitar isn't doing any of the rhythm. It's the rhythm section, and obviously Mike's vocals are rapped as well. But yeah, Unsung was just like a huge deal, because I was learning how to play guitar. I learned how to play the entire Meantime album, and I'm still writing riffs where I'll write the riff and I'll go, God damn it, that's fucking Helmet. But you know what? Helmet's not really doing things that I'm interested in anymore. So, somebody's got to do it, I guess. So that's my number 7, Unsung by Helmet.
Cool. Well, the thing I love about that is that you also managed to mention GTA San Andreas Radio X song. So that's one I don't feel bad about not including anymore.
What? The Unsung?
Unsung, yeah. Staying on that subject, because we're still in the incredibly game-changing year for me of 2012, where I decided to spend my 2012 in 1992. I've got...
Isn't it fascinating that 1992 was a game-changer year for me, and then you're experiencing it again 20 years later?
Yeah, because my number 6 is Them Bones by Alice in Chains.
Oh fuck yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. This was when I realized that Alice in Chains were like me if I was a band. Like,
Yeah.
like if someone took my personality and pre-existing tastes and you threw them into a melting pot, you would inevitably end up with something that sounded like Them Bones by Alice in Chains. It's
Yeah.
got the metal qualities, but it's got the grunge aesthetic going on. Um, just everything about 90s Alice in Chains, man, is just top tier. All right through facelift through tripod, but especially Dirt.
Yeah.
And
But
this
also
being the
the
intro,
sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you, but the thing about
go
them
for it.
bones the thing about them bones that is a characteristic of why music was so awesome back then was because that was a single with a music video on MTV.
Yeah,
The entire song is made up of riffs that don't like a lot of riffs like are kind of circular or have some sort of pattern that kind of rematches together, but literally the verse and the chorus are both sort of ascending riffs, dun, 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 and then the chorus, it's just it, and they're all,
yeah,
and it's all an odd time signature. So
yeah.
put just those words that I just said and be like, that was a song on MTV. And I'm just
Yeah,
like, that I just and it's so and you wouldn't even know that. That's one of the songs that's so well done that you don't really even notice how weird it is when you
yeah.
first hear it because you're just like, oh, it sounds fucking great. But it's like if you really deconstruct it, it's like it's very weird the way that it's put together.
It's almost as if it has everything working against it being a hit, and it succeeded out of spite alone.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, it wasn't their biggest song, but it definitely was a song. I mean, people know it, and
yeah,
so, but it's crazy.
yeah, man. Like that's a benchmark moment for me as well. Like I'm not even gonna lie, these past 3 songs, they're all on the same radio station in GTA San Andreas.
Hmm.
And I wanted to, highlight how much of a game changer 2012, 1992 in my case was.
Yeah,
Because I just had, I'd had a couple years in the thrash zone, but then it was the first time since getting into heavy music that something else had opened to me, and
yeah,
it was like being in a hallway full of doors and finally finding the key for this other one, and it's like, oh my god, I have a whole other room to hang out in.
yeah, yeah.
um so yeah, that is my number 6, and
Cool.
after managing to drink nearly an entire thing of water, I'm gonna really quickly go for a pee break. I will
We'll
be
be
right
right back after piss,
right.
and we're back. All right, cool. So hopefully, well, I mean, I edited it together, so nobody had a pee break. Like you could pause it. Moving on to my number 6.
Cool.
So this is we're getting into the thrash zone here for me. And I think
Nice.
I think I've told this story several times on different occasions on my channel, but I was in the sixth grade, I believe. So this would have been 1990, 89. No, this would have been the beginning of 1990. And there was a girl in one of my classes that kind of figured out that I liked like heavier rock music. But at that point, like I was listening to Faith No More and King's X and Living Color and Guns N' Roses and things like that. And so she was like, "Here, I want to let you borrow these 2 tapes." And the one of the 2 tapes was the debut album from Trickster, and I didn't really take to that one, although I do enjoy it. But the other
I
one
was gonna say, you're
was
about to have "Give It to Me Good" on your top 10 songs.
that's
of
my
all
number
time.
one. That's my number
Yeah.
one. It's my number one favorite music video of all time.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
But no, the other tape was "State of Euphoria" by Anthrax, and I just remember kind of like the cover was pretty cool looking, but I just remember popping the tape in the tape deck, and after the little cello intro, and the song kind of builds, uh, and then gets a little bit faster and faster. But once the verse of the song kicks in with the sort of downbeat thrash thing that they are doing in that song, that was the fastest thing I had ever heard. Listening back to it, it's not very fast, but
But
it
that
was the
pounding.
yeah, it was the first
Yeah.
time I'd ever heard that and guitars doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I just remember I fell in love with that sound immediately. And soon after that was when Persistence of Time, I think, had just come out around that time. So I got that one too. So it really led me into thrash metal. But that particular song, it is where it all began. Because like thrash, especially classic, well, that era thrash, I has been so important to me over the years, and I just love that sound so much. And that was the introduction to it, and really like the first actual metal that I think I ever listened to. Because everything other than that, sure, like the Faith No More and King's X and the bands like that, they have metal moments in them,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't be categorized as metal. So really, not only is Be All End All, did I say the name of the song? Yeah, Be All End All. The not only yeah, not only is it the beginning of thrash for me, but really like the gateway into metal and heavier things.
Hmm.
And so that song and that album it's still one of my favorite things of all time, just because it's so important to me. And that fucking song. That's another reason why like I hate it that the band doesn't really think it's that great, and I'm just like, come on, you guys need to back up and for a second, and because it's amazing. I love that album so much, but that first song is just such an important moment in my life, and yeah, I've been a thrash fan ever since. So that's my number 6, Be All End All.
Very nice.
Top 5.
Not very nice, because we're still in 2012. Don't worry. We are gonna move on beyond here, but here's the last the last quarter of the 2012-92
Yeah.
deep dive. And I have at my number 5 "Everything About You" by Ugly Kid Joe.
Oh man, I don't know. I expected this to be number 1, but I guess.
Well,
You're doing it chronologically.
I'm doing it chronologically, yeah. So,
But this
there's
would be
every
this is your favorite song of all time, right?
It's shifted. A different song is now my number 1.
Is that one on your
But
list?
it is on my list.
Okay, so we'll get to that. Okay.
The only one that is in actually any form of order is my number 1.
Interesting. I'm really
Yeah.
curious now. Okay.
So yeah,
It's Give It To Me Good.
Tell me what's your name.
I'm just a rocker. I ain't got much to say.
It's alright. I fucking love that. But yeah, "Everything About You." This song had lived in my subconscious from Wayne's World for like 4 straight years, up until the point where I saw the music video for it, which was on like a Kerrang TV or Scuzz TV,
Yeah.
100 greatest rock songs of the 90s or something. And this showed up about halfway down, and I was like, this is that song from my favorite movie. And then I was like, oh, these guys actually fucking rule. Then I went and checked out America's Least Wanted,
Yeah.
and from start to finish, it was like the most me album I'd ever heard in my life. It
Yeah.
was like, it had the 80s metal shred riffage at times, but it also had that grunge aesthetic that I was really drawn to as well. So it was this like meeting point of everything I was into in a single band. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I love everything about you. It managed to transcend genre boundaries where it was like, I don't know where to put this. Do I call it grunge or do I call it metal or hard rock? All of the above. Because it's got like the sonic qualities of everything that was happening at the time.
Yeah.
It's even got a funk metal section at the end.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just such a great song, and it's one of those that even on my shittiest day, that song comes on and I can fly from a 2 to at least a 8 or a 9 in seconds
Yeah.
in terms of mood, because I'm like, you know what? I'm a remove the rope from around my neck right now because this song's on. This song rules, and as long as it's here, I'm here to
Yeah.
fucking stay. Hell yeah, it's total party of the song. Love it.
It's one of my favorite songs of all time. But I ended up having to leave it out because I wouldn't necessarily call it an important song for me, but it definitely has one of those qualities where it's like that for me. It feels good always every time I hear
Yeah,
that song.
have a good time always. Yeah.
Um, well, so I guess for my number five, the song that nudged out midlife crisis, for a song that if a sound could be 92 or that period of time, especially 92, 93, and it just feels, I can't even explain it's so bizarre that a combination of sounds just brings you right back to your high school, early high school days, and just how everything felt at the time. And the number one song for that is "Wood" by Alice in Chains.
Oh,
It's
this got nudged out by them bones for me.
and and it Wood to me is one of the greatest songs ever written.
Top 10.
So, and yeah, it's just. But that's all. It's so weird because the number one reason why it ended up on my list and at number five are things that I can't really explain. It's just a song that just captures the emotion of that period of time for 14-year-old young head, so because it does have heavy qualities, it has emotional qualities, it lives in this world where there's metallic elements and alternative rock elements, and that's just so much. I mean, we're talking about 1992 and so much here, and we're mentioning Cannibal Corpse, Helmet, Alice in Chains, Ugly Kid Joe. It's like all of these things, and I think even me, somebody who was there, sometimes I take for granted the fact that so much great music was happening all at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like a lifetime's worth of music happened in about 3 or 4 years for me.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Wood is so just like that. It feels like the 90s. So I don't know if it does that for anybody else, but if anyone ever said, what were the 90s like? I would just play Wood and be like, just listen to this. That's it felt kind of like that. So it ends up being number five. This is like the one that is more of the feeling song. That's why I kind of put it at five. But it always just the nostalgia overload every time I hear that song.
I can attest to this because I wasn't even there and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Like it's this weird thing. I think the word is anemoia, which is a nostalgia for a time you
yeah,
weren't in.
we talked about
But
that.
but it's that thing of I know exactly what you're getting at because I've consumed so much media and content and music from that era that
Mhm.
I feel like if I wasn't there firsthand, I've got a pretty damn good idea of the aesthetic. You know,
Yeah.
it's like what most recently well, as recently as yesterday, I bought a load of like maxi singles, and a lot of those were Dan Reed Network ones,
Oh,
but
you had some Adam Seed in there too, which
yeah,
was
yeah, and
which was these dudes really like Faith No More. That's all I remember when I heard that band. I was like, they like
yeah.
Faith No More.
Well, here's the thing as well. Like I've trained myself to spot something that looks 91 or 92 from a mile away,
Yeah.
and like the as soon as I laid eyes on like a portion of the artwork, I was like,
Yeah.
grab it, yeah, flip it over. Yes, just as I suspected. What's that? 1991.
Yeah.
It's going in the bag. You
Yeah.
know? And I'd never heard of Atom Seed,
Oh, okay.
but you know, one of those moments where you're like, I know exactly what this is just by looking at it, and I was 100% right. And
Yeah.
I got home and I looked it up. I haven't actually played it on the turntable yet, but I did look it up on um, computer and gave it a listen. I was like, "Yep, funk metal
I don't.
jackpot." Big.
Yeah, I don't even know what the song was, but it was the only video by them that I saw on Headbangers Ball, and and it really does sound like they heard Epic and were like, we're gonna do something like that. It
Yeah,
just seemed so Faith No More, you know. But are they a UK band, Adam Seed? I think they might be.
I would have thought so, being as
Yeah.
the readily available maxi singles in a record store nowadays. Um,
Man, I can't.
yeah,
That's like a dream to walk into a record store and find stuff like that. It doesn't happen here. It's you're
yeah,
you're gonna get the same Herb Alpert album with the girl with the whipped cream all over her in every single record store, and the Bee
yeah.
Gees and other stuff. It's all the same records everywhere you go, which is why I don't really go to record stores that much. I do sometimes, but rarely.
I will say, shout out to Music Nostalgia, the record store in Truro, owned by some friends of mine. You know, if you're
Oh,
ever in
sweet.
Cornwall, if you're ever in Truro, check those guys out because they got a bitchin' record store, and they've got a bunch of your standard stuff, but they've also got a bunch of cool, weird stuff that you come across every now and again. Like I found one time like a Queensryche Empire picture disc in the tri-Reich shape, and I was just like, oh, that's so fucking cool. If I had money at the time, I'd have bought it, but I was
Yeah.
broke at the time. But
Really,
yeah,
the only thing that that I get jealous of for people that go to record stores often is that they find bootlegs, and
yeah,
that's all because you can't. I do a lot of my shit through Discogs, and Discogs and eBay you can't do bootlegs for the most part.
really,
And so I'll see, somebody has like an Anthrax live bootleg, and like, the I see a lot of the Metallica ones, but I go, oh, those are ones that are already on CDs and box sets, and they've just pressed it on vinyl. But there's other
yeah,
stuff where I go, God, nobody's gonna put that out. I want to have that on vinyl,
yeah.
but whenever I go to the record store, those things are not there. So
I'm definitely at a point in my vinyl buying life where I favor weird and wacky stuff that I find out in the wild at the minute
yeah,
compared to buying albums lately. I find myself more drawn to um, stuff that you wouldn't see listed in like a top 10 list where I like funny little weird color vinyl EPs at the minute. I'm really
yeah,
drawn to that sort of thing.
yeah,
Because they feel like a bit of a relic of a bygone era at this point. Because they don't. I mean, unless you're a super fan, that goes straight to the online merch stores of a lot of these bands, you don't see an awful lot of I mean, I suppose you do, but I definitely find myself drawn to those like maxi singles at the minute. I'm
I
more
love
than that.
maxi singles. They don't really make those at all anymore. And also a lot of the great ones that I have are from Europe and the UK and everything because they didn't like rock bands putting out maxi singles. That didn't happen a lot in America. It was all
Yeah,
pop music had a lot of those. So you could
yeah,
easily get a Paula Abdul maxi single, but the Faith No More ones that I have are all imports from from Europe. So
yeah. I got a few of those. They're
yeah.
pretty cool. But yeah, that's where are we at? Where are we at, my dude?
You're number four, right?
Okay, we finally get to move ahead a couple years. So, after being firmly entrenched in the grunge zone for about 2 years, I felt it necessary to further expand my flavor palette in terms of something new to check out. And for me, a big one, like 2014 for me was a big year in terms of all of these doors opening. I'd had
Yeah,
my thrash couple years, I'd had my grunge couple years. Now all of a sudden I'm hit with this wave of and it's a time I really wish I could live over again, because it was like, how I mentioned before, it's like a corridor full of doors and you keep
yeah,
finding like one key every 2 years.
yeah.
This one felt like five of them opened all at once, and I was just running from one to another trying to figure out what to do. Like, I'm talking around this time, I got into everything from Led Zeppelin to the Misfits, Toto, and this one I'm going to mention at my number four, Nine Inch Nails, Head Like a Hole.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah, that was the moment I realized, oh, this industrial thing's pretty cool, huh?
yeah.
And then, you know, I went and checked out Head Like a Hole just on a whim. I was like, I've heard a lot of good things about this Nin band. I will check them out.
Yeah.
Head Like a Hole. And then like everything comes together with that like super heavy riff played on a like synth bass, where I realized to myself, oh my god, something doesn't necessarily have to be metal to be heavy
Yeah.
or even played on a guitar at that point. So I'd say that kind of opened my eyes for like synthwave down the line, like a year later when Kung Fury came out
Yeah.
and True
Yeah.
Survivor, like all of that. Like that's when I started really lapping up the '80s synthwave nostalgia stuff.
I'm
But
trying to not to derail you on that. I'm trying to get into that stuff, but the stuff that I like is the darker, heavier stuff. I actually just pre-ordered the new album from Ghost. I know it's pronounced. I think it's pronounced Ghost, but
yeah,
every time I say that, I go, "There's already a band called Ghost. I'm gonna call you
yeah,
Ghost, so everyone knows what I'm talking about." But I've always really liked the stuff he does, and
yeah,
that's my area of like the synth wave, where it's like literally this album's coming out on Metal Blade, so it's like
yeah,
it's got a heavier quality to it, which I guess is what Nine Inch Nails had a lot of the time as well.
yeah.
But I really like
Especially on
that.
that Pretty Hate Machine
Yeah,
era.
which I
Yeah,
but I've been trying. I always try to go listen to other synthwave stuff, and it seems like it's very rare that something has all the elements that I want, because some of it's all good and enjoyable, but not it's missing. It's always kind of missing something for me.
I have several recommendations to hit you up with at a point where I can get
Oh,
everything in front
okay.
of me.
Yeah, because
So
really the
so
two big ones for me that I definitely like are Ghost and like Perturbator. I like those.
have you checked out Carpenter Brute?
No, but I've heard
That
of them, so I haven't.
they they lean very heavy into the synthwave instrumentation making metal music.
Cool.
Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like
so
that shit.
yeah, so it's got a very metalhead's take on synthwave thing to
Sweet.
them. Come to think of it, I'm dropping some synthwave recommendations right fucking now. Okay, what we got here? Obviously, the Kung Fury soundtrack.
Oh
That
yeah,
is
yeah,
that is a gold mine. Um, Atlas by FM84 has some cool stuff on it. That one's a bit poppier and more chilled out, but the 80s movie aesthetic to it is just gorgeous.
yeah.
Drift Stage Volume 1 by Myron is like if Steve Vai made a kick-ass video game soundtrack.
Nice.
And there's also there's an EP called Follow the Power by Vincenzo Salvia and PJ Datry or whatever he's called. Anyway, it's got like a panther's face in a gold square with like fog and lightning, and it's just so kick-ass, dude. It's
Nice.
like, yeah, atmospheric synthwave with like cool guitar over the top of it. Yeah, I need to
Sweet.
get back into synthwave because I had a time period of my life where I was like mad into it, and then like I got sidetracked by a bunch of other stuff again.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that'll
it
definitely be-
it happens. There's a lot of music and a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah. And it just so happens that I find myself drawn to pretty much everything released between 88 and 92. This being one of them.
Brings us back to Pretty
Yep.
Hate Machine and, well, Head Like a Hole. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this song had like, you could completely change the instrumentation on this to like just a full-blown metal band and it would translate perfectly. But Nine Inch Nails, Trent had such a unique vision where it was like, I'm gonna do Depeche Mode but metal. I know he probably wasn't thinking that. He definitely wasn't thinking that.
Yeah.
But he made this like synth pop gone horribly dark, and I fucking love it. I love that whole album straight start to finish. Listened to it the other day on a drive back from here to mine, and yeah, it was just one hell of a vibe going on that whole album. But Head Like a Hole is the crown jewel.
That particular song got my daughter into Nine Inch Nails because because I randomly put it in a playlist that we were listening to on the way to school, and that's the only Nine Inch Nails I think I had ever played for her. And then randomly, a couple months back, I went into her room to talk to her about something, and I look at her computer and she's playing the Downward Spiral. I was just like, oh yeah.
Nice.
And I was such a dork. I was like, oh my God, that's such a great album. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to leave because I didn't want to ruin it for her. I'm just like, it's so awesome that you're listening to that. But yeah.
You're training her well. She's
at this point she's on her own. Like I sprinkle in some things here and there, but she's at that age now. She's about to be 13, so she's at that age where I think she's figured out what she likes, and she's just picking through things old and new, to find those things that work for her. And she listens to some. I'm actually taking her to her first legit concert. Nice. that she wanted to go to in March. It's an artist called Jiraiya, and
right,
he is literally like Mr. Bungle. Like it's maybe the metallic side has been shaved off a little bit, but every time I've heard a song from him, I'm like, this is fucking nuts.
How do you spell that? Because I want to save that.
JHARIAH. I think he's a black dude. If you see him pop up.
Yep. Jaria. Risk. Flight of the Crows. Debt Collector. Yep.
Yeah,
Looks cool.
It's very off the wall stuff, but it's literally something where I'm like, I don't know what genre of music this would be, but we get to go see him live. Like she wants to go see him, so we bought tickets, and I'm like, hell yeah, we're gonna go check this dude out and the band that he throws together, because that's just like, I know it's going to be a blast because if you listen to the music, I'm just like, I don't know where his brain is, but man, that dude is all over the place. But he's cool. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, so Head Like a Hole for me is the soundtrack to, still being too young to drive, so sat in the back
yeah,
of sat in the back of whatever car we had at the time with both headphones in, head back, eyes shut, but just like got nothing else to do but just like get transported somewhere.
yeah.
Uh, and any Southwest listeners out there will like this. This song, Head Like a Hole, strangely takes me back to going to Trago Mills, which is if I'm going to describe this to you, it's like a big ass. It's not really a supermarket. It's like an all-purpose mega store that
Okay,
looks like an old Tudor building, and there's a bunch of peacocks around it and a nature walk. It's this like it's
okay.
really hard to describe. It truly is an experience all its own. It's kind of a labyrinthian place, in terms of navigating it. But like, there's so much stuff there. But yeah, there's just chickens and peacocks just fucking around out there. And it just very strangely, Head Like a Hole always takes me back to that time of my life because we
Yeah,
were going to Trago a lot for some reason. Yeah, it's a uniquely Cornish experience.
nice.
Yeah,
Maybe one day I'll get to go there. I don't know.
hell yeah. Just play a
you-
show there.
Yeah. Are you done with your number 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
Head Like a Hole.
Yeah. So
At
my
number 4.
my number 4 is probably the least known of songs, but it is easily that kind of thing I was talking about, where I got so into something and something is so influential to me, and then I figure out that most people aren't into this band or don't even know them. And I bring them in even closer as one of the most important bands of my life. The number 4 is the song "Gray" by Fudge Tunnel, and it legit was the first time, because at this point I think I had already, because this would have been 93 I think when I heard it. This was the first time, after kind of in my brain thinking I think I would like to make music, hearing this song was the first time that I went, I want to make exactly that. Like, that was the first.
Yeah.
And because it was 1 foot in metal and 1 foot in like weird noise music, and it just felt like the ultimate sort of Outcast heavy music for me. And it spoke to me because I always felt like and I've always felt ever since that I didn't quite belong anywhere, but somehow belong in a lot of different places at the same time. And so, yeah, so that band, they only put one more album out after that, and then they dissolved. And most people don't know who they are. So much so that, like, I always have to jump in when people talk about Nail Bomb, and they go, "Yeah, that was Max's project." I'm like, Max and Alex Newport, because because he was very important to that project. He was half of it. But yeah, Fudge Tunnel is one of those bands that was so influential to me, so much so that the very first time I got together, so I had written and recorded just at home on my stereo a batch of songs that I was referring to as an album. And for some reason, I guess, I don't know whose idea it was, or if I came up with it, but some of my friends were all like, "Well, let's get together and let's do like a one-time band, and we'll play like a handful of your songs." And so this would have been 94. I think it was 94. I don't know. Maybe early 95. All I know is that, no, it was 94. Anyway, doesn't matter. Nobody remembers anyway. But it was a house party with like 30, 40 people there. But a few of my friends, they put together this one-time band for me. And we did, I think, 4 of my own songs and then a couple cover songs, and one of them was Gray by Fudge Tunnel. It was good. That's how much I was like, this is what I want to do. So I'm just going to play
Yeah.
this song in my set. And so, yeah, the band has just been so important to me since then, and still super important to me now. Like, there's very few bands that I feel that kind of relationship with, where they mean so much to me, but also they're underappreciated to me in so many ways. So Gray by Fudge Tunnel ends up being number 4, and that's the man. I'm looking at my next 3. My next 3 are like 3 of the probably most well-known songs. It's like they're just like songs. My next 3.
Nice. Well, we come to another door in the corridor of taste that I need to tip my hat to.
Why did that all of a sudden make me think we were in Harry Potter? I don't know why. The corridor of taste. Harry Potter and the corridor of taste in it.
That's it's one of the lost books. We need to go back in time and write that, so that we ourselves can be characters in a massively successful franchise. But yeah, my number 3, I'm gonna tip my hat to my 80s glam era.
I was wondering when this was going to happen.
Yep, yeah, because I find myself, I'm much more of a fan of that era than I am of what a lot of those bands did post 1992, 3.
Yeah.
But that era in time is so important to my taste, and a sizable chunk of what I listen to is from this style and this era. But the song that triggered that is Wild Child by Wasp.
Oh, wow. Okay. I don't know why I was like, is it going to be White Snake? Like, what is it?
Yeah. This is the song that tipped me over the edge with, I need to get into this, because I passively known the GTA Vice City V-Rock soundtrack and thinking all the hair metal on that was cool.
Yeah.
But I'd never, I loved every song on that game, but I was like, I love everything here, and I love 80s movies, and I love metal, and this style has a crossover appeal for me. So when it finally clicked, I was like, oh man. I mean, it also might have something to do with the fact that I was in my first proper relationship, and it was, I resonated a lot more with the words, I want action tonight, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, 16-year-old Eddie was lapping up big hair, 80s snares, songs about doing it. But Wild Child had enough of that heavy grit to say, hey, look, there's this whole thing over here that you're neglecting that you're really going to like. And eventually when I did with Wasp, I got into some of the lighter bands of that ilk, but my favorite stuff was always stuff like Wasp, Cinderella, Dokken, stuff that had a bit more of that hard edge going on, but also had massive fire hazards on their head. So what can I say about Wild Child? Badass song, great hooks. Blackie Lawless's voice is killer, just one of the most unique, standout, beautifully ugly voices out there. Like, I don't know how to describe it in a way. I always thought to myself, if I'm gonna have a singing voice, I want something like that. That's like, ooh, this guy's kind of fucking menacing, and I'm like, yeah. So yeah, Wild Child, Wasp set me on my third deep dive, which was hair metal.
We
And
gotta
I don't.
do we gotta do Wasp at some point, because that's another one of those
Yeah,
bands that like I haven't found my way into. And I know a lot of their songs,
yeah,
and
and
they're so right up my alley of something that I would get into. It
yeah,
hasn't happened yet.
it's like Evil Rat, and I fucking love it.
Yeah,
It's I have a hard time sometimes calling them a hair metal band, but they're so adjacent to that because
yeah,
they were darker and heavier. They're like as heavy as that type of band got, you know.
yeah,
Um, so with that, Wild Child, Wasp, 2014 for me is when that walked into my life, and then 2015, 16, 17, and 18 were just a gradual increase of glam overtaking grunge for a little while. And
yeah,
then eventually I found my way back to grunge coming full circle. So I kind of simulated living through the 80s and having the 90s bring that to an end.
yeah.
um, so, all in all, though, I love all of this music here, hence why it's in my top 10 songs of my life.
All
So,
right.
over to you for your number three.
Cool. My number three is this was my introduction to this band. So I was would have been, I don't know, 10, around 10, maybe 11. And I remember there was a television show called Night Flight that would come on the USA Network, and they would play everything from like weird kung fu movies, uh, just weird short films, and they would play music videos, a lot of which were metal. That's like the first time I saw like All We Are by Warlock was like on Night Flight and stuff like that.
Great song.
Um, and it was the first time, like that was also Night Flight was also where I saw what would eventually influence the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, because there was an older Japanese show, and I don't know what the show was called, but what Night Flight showed was they took the episodes and named it Dynaman and dubbed it over with the most ridiculous dialogue. So it ended up being a fucking campy, stupid show, but it was
Yeah.
it was essentially the Power Rangers, but it was, years and years before or whatever. But anyway,
Yeah.
so one night I'm sitting at home, just hanging out, and this video comes on, and the video creeps me the fuck out. But the music was like, at that point, probably the heaviest thing that I had heard, but heavy enough to where it was very intriguing, but I felt a little bit uneasy. Like this was adult music, and I hadn't yet been tipped over there yet. Do you have any idea what I'm going at here?
Uh, Enlighten me. I'm looking forward to it.
So the song is "One" by Metallica, and
Wow.
it was it. They're my favorite band of all time, so it's a big deal for me because I didn't get into them at that point. But it was because that video is pretty heavy for an 11-year-old kid. But all I know is that the whole fucking last portion of the song, I remember as a
Yeah.
kid just being so like, that is the fucking coolest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for some reason, but I really do kind of remember having this feeling of, I feel like that's for older people. Like, it didn't feel like it was anything I could get into at this point. But I mean, within a couple years, I found my way there. But to me, it's one of the greatest songs ever. Like it's everything about it. It's just, and I think that's probably another reason why it's very important to me, because once I got into Metallica and I actually got to know this song, and hearing them play it live, because they always play it too fast. And I'm just like, just slow the fuck down, Lars. But that's one of the things is like, The tempo of the song is perfect. The songwriting, the way the song plays out, is absolutely perfect. Like it's.
Yeah.
I once heard that Jack Black say that when you hear that song Tribute and they're talking about the greatest song in the world, that discussion started because he said that One was the greatest song ever written.
Wow.
And then it went to them writing a song that sounds nothing like that, but it's about not remembering the greatest song in the world or whatever.
Yeah.
And I agree with them. Like it would be a huge argument to ever try to come up with what I think the best song ever written is, because there's too many factors that go into it, because I'd have to be like, well, One wouldn't exist without these other songs. So it'd be like, it's a huge fucking rabbit hole. But when it comes to like metal of the 80s, especially the later 80s, One is like, gotta be the fucking best song of anything. It's just so great. And so so it ends up at number 3, just because my top 2 are way more influential on me as a whole, but One is really like the beginning of my life with my favorite band of all time. That is, through ups and downs. We went through our down period, late 90s, early 2000s, where we were still like, that's the thing. If I was going to equate me and Metallica as like a marriage, post Reload through Saint Anger and up to Death Magnetic, we're like, we decided to separate, but I was still stalking my ex online, and occasionally we would get together and have sex, but we were technically separated. But I was always that thing where I'm like, we're going to get back together someday. And then with Death Magnetic, we got back together, and our marriage has been better than ever.
Glad
so
to hear it.
so it's like the song One is like the begin. It's like the looking across the crowded bar, and you see that woman, and you go, "Oh man, if only I had the nerve to go talk to her." And that her is the song One by Metallica.
I just had like an image in my head.
James Hetfield or Lars?
No, I just had this image in my head just then. If you go, when you're at a bar and you like lock eyes with a woman across the room, and you just go, "Landman has taken us."
Oh man. Well, I mean, I guess there's you could make a connection there too, because I've always, when I was younger, I would never go talk to the hot woman. I would immediately feel like I was paralyzed, much like the man in the song One. All of a sudden, I wouldn't be able to move. I'd just be like, all right, it's like, my friend would be like, why don't you go talk to her? And I'd be like, I can't remember anything. It's like,
boobies have taken my sight.
So yeah, number 3 is One.
Cool. So I arrive at the last chronological one that I'm going to mention here.
All right.
Now I've mentioned, everything up to this point has either been 80s or 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna kick it back to the 70s, and the song that made me want to check out the 70s.
Oh, I can guess?
You can guess.
Is it Hold the Line by Toto?
It's not. No. Although that has probably narrowed something down.
I know that one's important to you. So
yep, it very much is, which is why my number 2 is Strutter by Kiss.
Oh, and it's funny that we mentioned this today, because last night was the last quote unquote Kiss show, where they now announced that they are going to live on as avatars, and I immediately go, what the fuck does that mean? Like I love Kiss. I'm unapologetic every era of Kiss. I fucking love them. And whatever this is,
Means they're gonna go hang out with these blue people, and
but it's like whatever this is, I know I'm going to enjoy it in some way or another. But I'm also just like, look, you're going to have to give me some more information than this little brief description of like, we're going to live on as avatars. I'm like, it sounds nice, but what does that really mean? Because it's like, is it you just going to, program an AI thing to exist for eternity where it just randomly brings up new Kiss things via AI? That actually sounds pretty cool. Actually do that. Do that, Kiss, okay? Anyway, Strutter
from 1974.
Dang, man.
So this is another San Andreas song, but it's on a different station. So the KDST classic rock station that plays stuff from the 70s and the early 80s.
Yeah.
With the notable exception of Running Down a Dream by Tom Petty. But,
he's a 70s fits. Artist.
Yeah, it fits. And it was a song popular in the late 80s and early 90s. So, but it works. Anyway, Strutter by Kiss. I just remember hearing this and just the swagger and the charisma and the riffs. Just everything in this song just oozes. We're a great band and we fucking know it. And there's just something about the hunger of a band that was in its infancy that would go on to conquer the earth. But knowing deep down that it was fully conceivable, with songs like this. But I always just, this song just puts me in a again, it's like everything about you. I'm never not in the mood for this song, and it always puts me in a good mood whenever it is on. And it's one of those where I hear the and I just hear, oh yeah, whenever it shows up on shuffle or anything like that, I'm like, all right, stopping whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
Just gonna air guitar that down out down down out down out down out down down.
The first time I ever heard that song, it was the one entitled Strutter 78 off of Double Platinum. So it's got that kind of disco shuffle going on in it. And it's and I was just like, I like that song, but finally hearing the real version, I was just like, it's a little better like this, actually.
yeah. and I always loved this song, and it's why I eventually came round to the like classic rock station in that game, because it was like, I'd been spoilt by the heaviness of the stuff on Radio X, so I was kind of like, at the time I liked, to me heavy was 80s and onwards, so with the exception of like Black Sabbath, up to that point 70s mixes always sounded kind of weak to me, but then something clicked where I was like, oh no, now I get it. Now I find myself in a 70s mood, and I'm like, okay, this hits different because it's a different vibe, not because, not every riff needs to sound like Dimebag's playing it, which, shockingly enough, how a Pantera song has not ended up on my list is beyond me.
A fucking Kiss song didn't end up on my list. That's like, there's so many things that I left off that hurt my heart that I had to stop thinking about it and just work with what I had put in here.
That's why I chose to do what were the pivotal songs for me. Changed something about me, or changed a taste, or gave me a new one. So that was my first foray into the 70s classic rock stuff, of which I have since done a massive big old deep dive, and that one's still ongoing because I have yet to mine much of the gold that is the 70s. Over to you.
Awesome. My number 2 is we're heading back to the 90s, and My story with this song is the same as tons of people around my age. Um, I was just becoming a teenager. I was 13 years old, and I had gotten into a lot of rock music, a little bit of metal, and
Sure.
but to me, like the like I never thought about making music because rock musicians were the big ass
Mm.
poster on my wall, these larger than life motherfuckers, and I was like, I that's not me. I don't feel that in me. And then one night I'm watching. I think this was it. It was either Headbangers Ball or Alternative Nation, or what was it called? 120 Minutes. I think it was probably Headbangers Ball because I was like on and off watching
Mm.
that by 91. But they played the video for the first time, Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana. And it was kind of like, a few other things on my list where it immediately, I was like, I talked to my older brother and I was like, I need to go to the record store and I need to get this album like right now.
Mm.
And the next day we went and I got it on cassette because it was, it's cheaper that way. But
Yeah.
it was the beginning of it was the combination of the song, which is one of the greatest songs ever, on top of what the band looked like. And I just remember just sort of looking at them and thinking like they don't look like rock stars,
Mm.
and they look really cool though, but they look really cool in a way that like I feel like I know these guys, or I could be one of those guys. And it was like a switch went off in me at that point where like I really started to think about I wonder if I could make my own music. And
Mm.
it led me in that direction. And not only that, when I started to learn, I started to learn how to play guitar a couple of years later. The Nirvana catalog was a big deal because it's great for a beginner guitar player. It's not that hard, but it's cool, great songs, and you get to play along with these great songs. But you're learning how to play guitar by playing these things that aren't insanely challenging, but you're getting to know the instrument. And so, like, yeah, "Smells Like Teen Spirit" is I really don't know if I would have fully gotten into making my own music if it wasn't for that song and that album. I mean, something else could have
Yeah.
been the catalyst. I don't know, but it just so happens that this was. And just the fact that I was 13, I think everything was time and place because I was the perfect age for that song. Like whenever they talk about like, the alternative grunge kids, this music is speaking to these kids. Like that was me. Like I was, so I hear people that are like slightly older Gen Xers and they'll just be like, yeah, it just didn't do anything for me. I'm like, yeah, of course it didn't do anything for you. You were not
Yeah.
13. It spoke to me in just some sort of way where I was just like, everything about it. It's aggressive but melodic. It's got a huge fucking sound to it, but it feels like almost like, I mean, at the time, I don't think I really even had an idea of what punk was. Although I did own Troops of Tomorrow by Exploited, so I had an idea of some punk stuff. But it all kind of
Mm.
felt like that, and I was just like, that just feels so great. And so, yeah, it's a song that I don't think could ever be overplayed for me. Um, Still has the same impact every single time I hear it. It's an amazing track on its own, but also in my life. So my number two ends up being "Smells Like Teen Spirit."
Very nice. Which leads us to our number one picks. What are our top songs of all time? And I'm just going to say this now. Hold the line.
I ruined it, didn't I?
It's the fucking best song all time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single note of this song is a 10.
Yeah.
I Hold the Line has been with me since before I even really knew how a guitar worked, where
Yeah.
it was like I first heard Hold the Line on GTA San Andreas again. Like half of this list is San Andreas's doing. Um,
Yeah.
but this song for me still gives me goosebumps now. And it immediately transports me back to being about 10 years old, hopping in like a plane in the desert at night in this game, firing up the engine, and very first thing that happens is brah, ding 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 ding
Yeah.
ding 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 blunk 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 blunk, take off, bam, down 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 down, and thinking like I was the coolest motherfucker. I might as well have been sat with aviators on while playing this game because I was just there mesmerized by this like perfect childhood moment of just
Yeah.
being on top of the earth. And just not to mention the incredible performance from everyone in Toto. And
Yeah.
I'm going to come out here and not only say that Hold the Line is what I believe the greatest song of all time. It is opinion.
Yeah.
However, what is quite possibly objectionable, not objectionable, objective fact is that Toto might just be the best band. I'm just gonna say it. You get 6 session dudes together.
Mm-hmm.
These motherfuckers write Hold the Line, Africa, Rosanna, all of these incredible songs that run the gambit all the way from classic rock to pop in the 80s. And
Mm-hmm.
then, like, the fact that these guys wrote Africa and a song like Falling in Between or Kingdom of Desire, those are some Toto deep cuts that
Yeah.
we covered in our Toto episodes. To anyone who doesn't think Toto can do heavy rock, I implore you to listen to the song Falling in Between right this fucking moment. Pause this, listen to that, and come back with your findings, because I'm about to tell all the peanut butter platypuses out there, as a metalhead, as a grunge fan, Toto is still the best band. And, you know, I would call them, like, I wouldn't necessarily say they're in my top 5 bands of all time, but they are that 6th band that's there. And I just can't help but feel as though, like, everything, they're one of those bands where I care about everything they've done.
Yeah.
And, you know, some bands I like, you know, I dip in and I'm like, I like this era of this band.
Mm-hmm.
And everything else is kind of like, I like the odd song here or there. But Toto is one of those ones where, you know, right from album 1 to the most recent, I am pretty much 100% on board.
Yeah.
But it just so happens that Hold the Line just means so much to me in a sense that it's never lost its effectiveness as a song, but also transports me back to such an exciting, important part of my life where, you know, I had so much ahead of me and I didn't even know it. So this song kind of signals to me it was one of the first times that music had the effect of giving me those goosebumps, you know?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I was almost kind of scared by this power, because I was there like, oh my God, what is happening? I feel incredible. And yeah, Hold the Line by Toto. It sits far above everything else in my play count. Like,
Yeah.
here's Hold the Line and here's everything else, you know? Uh, it'll always be it'll always be my favorite song. I think, just hands down of anything ever. Yeah,
That whole album's great. Like I bought that album on vinyl. I was so impressed by that album because it's just
yeah,
because the album doesn't all sound like Hold the Line. Like that's the thing
no,
is that you wouldn't even know that was the same band really, except for the
no,
vocalist is similar in other songs too. But
yeah.
um,
I remember you really liked "Girl Goodbye." Down, 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 down,
yep.
down, 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 down. Out run. I, I'd quite happily just do the Toto episodes again.
Well, right now we got Farty Mike starting
Oh,
up, so we have a Farty Mike segment of the show.
never met him.
There he is again, Farty Mike. Every time. Now we're back because the Farty Mike has left the building, and that will allow me to get onto my number one song,
Nice.
the number one song of my life. And this had to go there because my entire life that's led me up to here all starts with me not only getting into rock music, but getting into like my own thing. Because prior to this song, I was listening to whatever was popular on regular ass radio, but mostly what my older brothers were listening to. I was into like, I did get into Michael Jackson. That was my first thing where I was like a big fan of something. But everybody was into Michael Jackson, and I listened to like
Yeah.
Madonna and Huey Lewis and all this shit. But none of that music had that feeling of like something that I discovered that was kind of my thing. And that all starts with this particular song. And there's two songs around the same time, but this has to be the one because it was the one that led me to buy this album and then led me into rock music, which led me into metal, which blah 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 blah, so on and so forth. And I am here before you today as Old Head. It all starts with the song Jump by Van Halen.
Wow.
And so that, like, I really feel like that is it. There's and I sure I was a little kid. I was like 6 or something when I heard this, I think. But I have such memories of seeing this video for the first time on MTV, getting the album on cassette, being so obsessed with it that the songs just kind of lived in my head. Like I have a clear memory of my parents, my dad kept throughout my life trying to get me to get into sports, and I don't want to be in sports, but he got me into being into a t-ball team, which t-ball is like little kid baseball, but the ball is set on top of a little stick and you just whack it off the stick. It's not, there's no pitcher. Although there was still a kid that would go like this. And I'm like, why is he even there? That's the shittiest job ever. But I hated doing it so much so that I have a clear memory of like, well, I had to be in the outfield ready for some balls to roll my way. There was nobody's hitting balls in the air, but I clearly remember in my brain, just like out there and in my brain, I'm doing Panama, dun, 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 and balls are just rolling, and I'm not paying any fucking attention because I didn't care, but I did care about Van Halen. Like I was so just like, it was like that. I would wear out the D size batteries in my boombox. I had a little boombox. And it took like 4 D size batteries, the big ass thick ones. Mm-hmm. And I would be in my backyard with that motherfucker cranked with 1984 all the way through to the point where you would start hearing the sound degrading because the batteries were running out. And I was just like, oh, I did it again. But I loved this album so much. And Jump was the song that got me into it. And yeah, it really is responsible for, I feel like, putting me on the path that I was on. Now you could say that I was probably meant for that path, and it would have been some other song, but Jump was the one that did it, and I could say objectively, Van Halen's the greatest band of all time. But
Yeah.
because I love every. I've gotten to the point now where we've talked about this before. I've gotten to the point where I just love, like I love David Lee Roth for what he did. I love Sammy Hagar for what he did. I'm even cool with Gary Cherone. But it's Eddie Van Halen, Alex Van Halen, and that other guy, Michael Anthony. Those guys playing together is, to me, one of the most pleasing things you could ever listen to. It's just so, like, as a band, I just listen to those dudes and I'm just like, oh, they're so fucking good. And maybe there's a little bit of that seed was planted early on. So the first things that I heard were those combinations of players. And Jump is just super important to me. I don't think it's nowhere near the best Van Halen song. In fact, it's pretty damn cheesy, but I can't deny the importance and impact that it had on my life. So, Jump had to go at number one. So there we go.
Great music video too. Like I love that video so much. Yeah.
That one and the Panama video were both big for me when I was a kid, because it was just like, these are fun ass rock dudes. I love it.
Yeah.
You know?
I just remember like marveling at the size of Alex Van Halen's kit, because that was the first. I think that might have been, with the exception of Live Ship, Binge and Purge, that might have been the first time I saw a drum kit that was like way bigger than your standard 4 or 5 piece drum set.
Yeah.
Like because my idea of a big drum set was the white Tama kit that Lars had during the Black album. You know, the 6 toms, 2 bass drums. I mean, that's what I have. You know, half of it's not set up right now, so it doesn't look very impressive. But you know, it's all there. Some of it's packed up for a show, but
and then eventually you see an '80s photograph of Neil Peart.
You end up at the logical conclusion of the likes of Neil Peart and
I've got wood blocks, I've got chimes, I've got the digital pads here, I've got a gong behind me, I've got some other little toms that go around behind me. It's like it got to the point where it's just like, and I love the fact that he would play all that shit.
Yeah.
Like, even if it was for a second, just for a second.
Did Neil Peart ever do that thing where the drum set was so big he needed multiple seats?
No, but his seat would rotate.
Right.
Like he would do his drum solo and he would turn around.
Yeah.
But I think in the early days he just got up and turned around and sat on the other side just to play the other things. Because not only that, they also had the what the fuck were they called? You would have like a xylophone, vibraphone kind of thing, but then you'd also have they look like little tubes, but they would make little sounds. Boom, boom.
Oh, tubular bells.
Tubular bells. I mean, he had like all that fucking shit. And so,
yeah,
man, that's so much. That's like the kind of the dream of, like, if I was like a millionaire, I would have them put together a replica of Neil Peart at the most amount of gear that he ever had.
Yeah.
I'm like, just recreate that in this room so I can occasionally just go there and just be all over the place. Because that's living the dream right there.
The drum kit I always wanted growing up was it was the Mike Portnoy Purple Monster kit that just basically took every percussion instrument in existence, turned it into a Neil Peart style condensed massive drum set where you were just basically encased in shells, hardware, and fucking just everything around you made a different sound.
Yeah.
Like, to the point where I even had a set of Critalis set up on the fucking thing.
I
Like,
do,
goddamn.
do you is it weird that rolls on like Tiny Toms has almost like an ASMR thing for me?
I'm with you.
Like
Yeah.
I'll hear like if there's a drum solo and there's a little bit where they play like on Tiny Toms, like
Yeah,
I just
super
it
satisfying.
feels so good. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It feels weird, but also satisfying at the same time.
You'll be pleased to know I have a set of those.
Oh, of course. Oh yeah, yeah.
I got a real tiny one as well, but he's like way over in the corner.
Nice.
I won't bust out the tiny one on the show though.
But you know who else had a fantastic drum kit in the '80s? Alex Van Halen. So they would bring me right back to my song.
Very nice.
Yeah, mid '80s Alex Van Halen's drum kit's pretty fucking rad. Anyway, so that's it. That's it for our. Do we need to celebrate this one? It's not a band discography. I almost feel like it's not necessary.
Yes, we've accomplished it.
We did that. So yeah, that was our top 10 songs of our lives.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting discussion and interesting process for me for getting them there. But honestly, though, at least half of these songs would never leave this list. Other ones, they might move around, or other songs could come in, but I really don't think so, because it's like, that period that because everything here is teenage years or a little bit of childhood, and then Mastodon. So how often is that going to happen in my life? But you never know. So yeah, so that was fun, and peanut butter platypus to all of you, and we've got 2 more episodes for this year.
Yeah.
And the next episode, we will be ranking our last band ranking of the year, and it is one of the most influential rock bands ever. One of them.
Yeah.
Because people have had some guesses, and I'm like, that's also an influential band, yes.
Yeah.
But I think in our lives, the kind of music that Eddie and I love the most, a whole lot of bands that would point to this band, and we're going to try to do it all in one episode. So it might be a chunky boy, just like this one. Yeah. So, but then after that, we have our holiday special, which will be a lot of fun as usual. Mm-hmm. And I gotta get a Christmas sweater so I can dress for the occasion. I'm gonna try to find that.
Way too many.
I'm gonna try to find that Die Hard Christmas sweater and order it for myself.
Nice.
Anyway, all right. So that's at the end of this episode, and I hope you all enjoyed it. We'll be back next week with the mystery band. That once you see the name pop up, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, of course." But we'll see you again then. But that's it for this episode of Cranked and Ranked, the CNR sidebar, if you will. And as usual, I'm going to throw it over to Eddie Sparxx to take us out.
Later, dude. Ooh. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Ding, 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 ding. Hold the line. Later, dude. Later, dude. Yeah.
Bye, everyone.